Alex.
Dr. Jimmy Kilimadzoglu.
How are you?
I'm well, my friend. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for having me here.
It's my pleasure. So we're streaming on YouTube, and we're doing this here. And then I'm going to email blast the interview out to our people. So first of all, I want to thank you for doing this with me. This is a new program on top of all of our other programs. Basically, the purpose of it is to really get to know you a little bit and take the time to really understand your philosophy, your passion, your interest, and the unique individual that we've all those who know you have learned to love and appreciate.
Great, thank you so much.
Yeah, so we're talking about how a dentist can save your life, your children's life, as well as your marriage, which is a big statement, but I think it's an important conversation to have because I think dentists have been relegated to, filling cavities pretty much. And people don't appreciate the nuances of what a healthy oral cavity can provide for a person's life, sleep, toxicity levels, digestion, so many things that are just not promoted to the general public. So when they go to a dentist, they think a dentist is a dentist is a dentist. But you and I have learned that that's not true. So let's start with this here. How is it that you can save a person's life, their child, and their marriage?
Very, very good question. Like you said, most of the time when people think of the dentist, they just think of teeth, maybe smile, maybe oral pain, but they don't think of other things. And we always say the mouth is connected to the rest of the body. So when I look in somebody's mouth, I take a look at the back of the mouth, the throat, tonsils, how big is the tongue, is there a good airway? And then I look at the whole person, right? Is there tendencies for obesity? Do we have a very big neck? Does the patient have bags under their eyes? So I'm looking at the whole individual. And a lot of times I'll ask, hey, do you get a good restful sleep? Because as we know, there's nothing more important than a good restful sleep. And a lot of times people say, yeah, I get a good night's sleep. But then I dive into it a little bit more. I ask some more questions. Do you feel energized? Are you full of energy? Are you full of life? Are you able to do the things that you want to do? Or do you find yourself slowing down in the middle of the day? Do you feel like you are lethargic or you have brain fog? And then when I ask all these questions, they say, kind of think of it. Yes, I do get 8 hours of sleep, but I still feel like I'm tired. So then I can really dive into it and figure out if they have an airway problem. Because look, if you can't get enough oxygen in your system, how are you going to be able to feel well rested, right? How are you going to feel like you have a lot of energy? And what happens is when you don't have a good airway, you could have sleep apnea, which means you stopping breathing in the middle of the night. And then you gasp for air, you don't even realize it. And that happens multiple times during the night. So if I can identify that early, I can guide them to get a sleep study and eventually make an appliance that can open up their airway so they can get more air. And that will prevent them from, for example, falling asleep behind the wheel, God forbid, right? So I could possibly save somebody's life that way. If they're snoring and their bed partner can't really sleep in the same room, what happens, Alex? They go into a different room, don't they? So, and that can strain.
Or a different apartment,
Or a different apartment, for that matter. So that can put a lot of strain into that relationship. So if I can get rid of the snoring, get rid of the sleep apnea, you have a happy couple. Don't forget that if you don't have a lot of oxygen, it starves your brain, it starves your heart, but it also puts a strain in your reproductive organs, right? So you don't have libido. I mean, you can't focus on that anymore. You don't have that energy. So I think by doing that, you can enhance the relationship in that way as well. And let's not forget the kids too. I mean, you have these kids and they don't pay attention in school, and we're too quick to diagnose them with ADD, and we give them Ritalin, and that doesn't help them go to sleep anyway because it's a stimulant. So we think that there's other issues with the kid. Meanwhile, they have sleep apnea, and if I can help with that with an appliance, guess what? Now they're more focused, they get better grades, and they do really well, and they're healthier.
So I want to talk about a couple of things. I want to talk about the sleep, definitely, the appliances, of course. I want to talk about how you actually heal the enamel naturally before you start, drilling and doing something more invasive. I want to talk about implants. I want to talk about amalgam fillings. I want to talk about nutrition and what can be done to kind of keep the oral cavity healthy and well. I want to talk about the oral biome, because this is where the digestion begins. And if the digestion in the mouth is not effective or efficient, then we're putting more of a burden on the rest of the digestive system. And a lot of times what happens is if the body becomes overwhelmed with these larger pieces of food that it can digest, then first of all, we're not absorbing the nutrition from the food that we're eating. We're wasting a lot of money on food that we're not actually turning into fuel. And worst of all, it can inflame the digestive system and create something called leaky gut, which is the precursor to a lot of chronic diseases, from what I understand, inflammatory kind of diseases. But before we do all of that, I've been interviewing you. You've been doing presentations with me for years, and I love it. And we'll kind of get a glimpse of your story. We get a glimpse of your ideas and passion and philosophy. I know you love dentistry, and that's an unusual case in and of itself. But it's so important to kind of fall into the line of work that really turns you on. And so I want to talk about all that. I want to talk a little bit about your personal life. I want to get to know you as a human being, as well as a brilliant professional. So let's begin with, you were working in a restaurant for like 7 years before you actually entered dentistry. This was part of your family, I think, right? Your family had a restaurant.
Yes, absolutely.
So you were a chef in a restaurant, and so let's talk about this whole journey. You started in school, and you wanted to be what? You wanted to take over your dad's business, or what was your plan?
I mean, I always wanted to be a dentist, but I was, I guess you could say I was like a floating butterfly, and I would see one flower, and I would be very intrigued by that, and then I would see another flower, and I'd be intrigued by that. So, both my parents would cook, and I would be fascinated by that. So through high school, I would actually do these culinary courses, and I was intrigued by French cuisine, because I feel like French cuisine is one of the most technical culinary cultures that we have in the world. And obviously my background is Greek, so I was also inspired by that. And my father had a Greek restaurant, and I had these crazy ideas of doing some saute things and introducing wine while we're cooking. And, we don't really cook a lot with shrimp, but as you know, the French really do. So I wanted to create this fusion, and I came up with this menu, and I presented it to my dad. And in the beginning, he kind of dismissed it, but then he said, "Wait a minute, this could work." You mix some flambe with feta cheese and combine these flavors. So it allowed me to be creative. It allowed me to make people happy through their eyes and their mouth. So it was about combining all the senses. And I feel that passion, you can translate it in anything, right? You can translate it in healthcare, because, being a chef, you're creating things and you're feeding people, you're making them happy. You're presenting this beautiful plate, right, as you're plating it, and they feast on it. And my masterpiece will be enjoyed by them, right? Similarly, in the way that I present healthcare, my masterpiece, they walk away with. I don't get to keep it, right? I can maybe take a picture of it or an X-ray, but I don't get to keep that. And I allow them to enjoy that. So similar passion, if you will.
Right. I mean, the creative mind can go into and become a chef, and they can become a doctor, because it takes a lot of creativity, especially if you're free to do the kind of doctoring that you're doing, which is not constrained by the bureaucracy of the health insurance model and all the different people that want to control the individual doctor. Because if they control the cash flow, they ultimately control, directly or indirectly, your decision-making process. And that, something else we can talk about, the healthcare system. But so you were studying to be a chef, and you worked with your dad for 7 years. How was working with dad? Was he tough? Was he a tough dude?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
you can
Never
imagine
happy
that, right?
about anything, always serious with the face. My father, the same thing, Soviet Russian, impossible to please,
That's
uh,
right.
barking orders like they own you.
You nailed it, just like that.
Funny. But if you can survive that kind of educational upbringing, then you learn some stuff. You learn how to, you know, mm, deal with the challenges that life throws at you, and other people who come with you with that attitude. You lived with it for 7 years at least in that working environment. So all of this is child's play.
Exactly. And what he did right, I wanted to emulate, and what he didn't do so well, I wanted to kind of come up with different ways of dealing with things, right?
But I have to tell you, I give our parents, our dads, our parents, a tremendous amount of credit because, they came from a different world. My dad, he was born right after World War II in Soviet Russia. And his father died just after the war. He fought in the war, and then he died shortly after because he survived the Nazis, but the communists finished him off. Man, very sad story, but
It
funny.
is a sad story.
Anyway, my dad was one of four, and he grew up in that environment. So you had to literally fight for survival. So this was a very tough man. And, when he had his children, he didn't have a father figure to kind of teach him how to be gentler and nicer and speak in lovely tones as you and I do. I mean, I see you raising your kids. It's just such a pleasure, even though I get to watch it virtually. I mean, you are the super dad of the decade. I mean, you're doing such incredible stuff with your kids. And I know how much that time and that experience is so remarkably precious, and it molds that character and molds them as human beings. So what you're doing now, I think, is just can't put a price on it, but it's a pleasure to watch a dad of your, stature.
These experiences that we share with our kids, right? They're so precious. Like, what's more important, have a fancy car or taking the kids to England to watch their favorite football team play? That's just something that's unforgettable.
Exactly right. The car will rust and nobody will remember it. Although I did have a Triumph TR6 back in the day. I bought it for $100 and rebuilt it completely, and that is unforgettable. But putting that aside, I agree with you. The moments that we get to spend, and I have to tell you, like my son is 30, almost 30. They got married a year ago. Now they're having a baby, and like the last 10, 20 years, I don't know what happened. I was dropping him off in junior high school, and all of a sudden, I went to his wedding in San Francisco. So just saying, like these 10 years where they go from teenager into adults, I don't know, it just goes by so quickly. You gotta be cognizant of it, and I think the way you're doing it is just perfect.
I think we all have to savor those moments, because they go by pretty quickly.
So you're a great dad. You focus a lot of time and effort on that part of your life, and I think that's amazing. You have your practice. So now, okay, so you went to dental school, right? And you studied dentistry like everybody else. You came out thinking amalgam fillings are the bomb, inexpensive and so easy to work with, so malleable. And then somewhere along the way, you just went like off the rails. What happened?
Yeah, like you said, and at some point I'm saying to myself, wait a minute, this is not the greatest thing since sliced bread. The way that they pitched it to us in dental school was, look, you can do this underwater, it's moisture tolerant, it's inexpensive, like you said, and it lasts a long time. And then I looked into it and I'm like, wait a minute, there's definitely mercury, and you can't tell me that, okay, you put in the mercury, it's only there for like the few minutes that you're going to pack it into the tooth, and then it's locked in, and it'll never be affecting the patient. And then I reflected on the fact that the Environmental Protection Agency makes dentists jump through hoops. We cannot take this amalgam and just throw it in the garbage. When we take it out of the patient's mouth, you can't just dump it in the sink. You have to have a special expensive separator that separates the mercury, and we have to pay a lot of money to dispose of it properly. We have to keep logs, right? They put it into the space capsule, they shoot it out into orbit. It's not safe for the environment, but the Federal Drug Administration says it's safe for people, it's safe for humans, it's safe for kids. that didn't really sit with me very well. And then I did some more independent research, reading and looking into things, and I found out that when this amalgam material is in your mouth, 50% of that metal filling is mercury. And mercury, we know, is the most toxic thing we have available. And, it goes into the environment, it goes into fish, it creates these imbalances in your nervous system. It's a really powerful neurotoxin. So when I looked into it, I found out that when you're having something hot, you have vapors that come out. You have something cold, this material expands and contracts. So little by little, you are exposed to this mercury because it's not something that's just passive. It's something that is dynamic because it's in the mouth, and the mouth is a very vigorous environment. So I didn't feel comfortable using this material, even though it's allowed to be used in this country still. And then when I found out in Europe, there's about 18 countries that it's illegal to place this material in people's mouths. So all those things didn't really jive with me. So I did a lot of research and I basically eliminated this material. I haven't been using it for about, no exaggeration, 20 years. So we have better materials. We have biomimetic materials, but also you can't just arbitrarily take it out of a patient's mouth. You have to take it out in a certain way so they're not exposed to fumes, right? If you have little chunks of the material, that's actually okay, but you can't volatilize it by drilling it and creating these fumes because, we absorb it by contact, we absorb it by inhalation. We want to make sure we create certain barriers so that the patient is not exposed to it. And if something went past the goalie, we have to be able to create a protocol where they can chelate it, right? Whether it's activated charcoal or chlorella or something, right? To detoxify the patient for that week or 2 week period.
Well, I have to tell you that it's a lot easier to get mercury in your body than to get it out of the tissue. There's some protocols like chelation therapy and charcoal, like you said, and some other things. But once it's in there, to get it out is very tricky. And, you have your amalgams. I had 13 amalgam fillings when I first came to the United States. I went to a dentist and he was very liberal. If he could have pasted my entire face with mercury, he would have done it, but he only put it in my teeth. I had 13, peanut size amalgam fillings when I was like 10, 11, whatever it was. And so, my mercury levels when I tested them in my 30s were off the chart. So then eventually I had them removed by a dentist. She wasn't as cautious about removing the mercury as she probably should have been, but so I had this tremendous amount of mercury. So I've been doing chelation, ozone therapy, a million different things to try to get, because every time I test myself, the mercury goes down, but then it goes up. Mm-hmm. And so to get it out is very tricky. It's better never to have it in there. And that's one of the things I really love about your philosophy and approach, that if you can identify an early sign of the enamel becoming damaged, if you have the technology, which you do, to identify it early in its very baby stages, that you can actually use mineralization to heal the tooth, which I've never heard from any other person or dentist or human or client or anybody. I've never heard that as a thing. I never imagined that you would be interested in doing something like that. So let's talk a little bit about this. Like what possessed you, where you could make so much more money drilling the tooth and then eventually pulling the tooth and then eventually, doing a thing, implant. That's a much more profitable model, but you decided you want to go the other way. Why?
Yeah. So like you said, I think with everything that we do, we were talking about cooking, we were talking about, soccer or, scuba diving, fishing, whatever you like to do. It's all about love, isn't it? Right? You love what you do, you love your hobbies. But same thing with dentistry. I mean, I teach in the dental school and I tell people, listen, don't go into this profession if you don't love it. If you think you might like it, don't go into this profession. You have to love it. So when a patient is in my chair, there's a certain love. And, there's different types of love, but, I love this person. I want to take good care of them. just like I love my kids, right? I make pretend my patients are my kids, my mother, my father, my brother. I love these people and I want the best for them. So if I see something, I'm like, oh my God, I see a little erosion here. There's like a little, this tooth was a lot shinier last time I saw you. Why is it dull? How come it's matte finish and it's not like shiny, like a mirror glossy appearance? There's some breakdown here. What's going on? Oh, I got into lemon water, and I have to play detective to figure out what's going on. So, okay, well, lemon water is acidic. If you use a straw, that might be better. How do we bring this luster back to your tooth, right? So when I did some more research, I found out, and I was so fascinated. You should have seen me that day. I was literally jumping up and down. I'm like, wait a minute, we can remineralize teeth? Yes, you can. And chemically, what happens is if you flood the tooth with mineral, okay, like calcium phosphate, for example, you literally change the composition of the tooth. You make it stronger, right? And if I use a transilluminator, think of like a tiny, tiny little fiber optic flashlight. It floods the tooth with light and I can see, look, this side looks different than that side. Why is this demineralized? Why is this starting to break down? So I can identify why it's happening. Maybe we're not flossing. Maybe we're having some different habits, right? The patient is a college student and they're very stressed. Their hygiene is different and I can compare, right? Because I follow these patients for a long period of time. Many of them come to me as like 1-year-olds and now they're in college. So I say, hey, what changed here? Let's try to reverse this so we can actually change the composition of the hydroxyapatite, right? I don't want to get too fancy, but the chemical composition of the original enamel, what if we can make it stronger? I'm all for that, right? Because this is a natural way, right? Calcium phosphate is found in nature that we can actually add more mineral to the tooth, making it more resistant to acid, right? So if they're having, whether we're drinking something that's acidic or we're having sugar and bacteria in their mouth can turn it into an acid, I want to hit it from a biological aspect so I can save these teeth. Because what's better? And if it was in my mouth, what's better? Saving the tooth or allowing it to become a big cavity and then we drill into it? I don't see myself as a tooth carpenter, right? Although I do some carpentry, so to speak, micro carpentry, but carpentry nonetheless. I think of myself as a physician, but my specialty is the mouth, right? It's the oral cavity.
So that's what I'm saying. It's like if you can mineralize the tooth and repair it, you can save a person eventually having that tooth pulled and doing an implant, which can become, it's wonderful that we have this technology. And it's wonderful that we have the different non-toxic technology and materials that you can put into them. But it's still surgery.
Correct.
So if you can guide people past that, like one of the things I'm thinking, it would be great, like for you practice like yours with your philosophy, for it to be kind of a membership model. If somebody can join the practice, let's say just off the top of my head for $20 a month. And for that $20, your job, they come in once a year, and your job is just to make sure that everything is progressively getting better from one year to the next. And then if something comes up, then it's a different thing. But if people can kind of contribute to this foundational, proactive, wellness, preventative, philosophical approach, that would be amazing for the clients. And you can have like 1,000 members or 10,000 members. And then out of those 10,000 members, inevitably, you're going to have to do like all the things that you do anyway, full mouth restoration, implants, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. But just, off the top of my head, that would be a fun model to play around with. And also, like you've been talking about brushing your teeth with
hydrogen peroxide, baking soda,
hydrogen
oil.
Hydrogen peroxide, baking soda. It's probably difficult to package all of that. But if there was a way to package that, plus with the mineralization process, so the toothpaste can actually, because as I clean my teeth, based on your suggestion with these materials, my teeth don't build up the tartar in the back, which they used to a lot because I drink tea and all that kind of stuff. But it keeps the back of my teeth very, very clean. I don't think most people experience that. So if, it's something we should think about, like designing a kind of toothpaste, your brand, that incorporates all of this remineralization and this deep cleaning.
Maybe
it's a
some probiotics, right? We can
probiotics.
in there,
Thank you. So
right?
yeah, come up with some cool different packaging, not a tubes. Something worth exploring, I think. And all right, so your office is probably one of the most technologically advanced centers that I've seen, and I've been to a lot of offices throughout Long Island. In New York City, I've worked with holistic dentists, and holistic, not holistic, they all usually look the same. They're tiny. They have magazines piled. They've been there for 3 years. They have this particular smell which frightens. As soon as you get in there, you're already frightened. But I was in your office today, by the way. I don't know if your beautiful girls told you. I dropped off some of the magazines, and that place. That place is just. It's beautiful. It smells beautiful. Your staff is beautiful. There's a lot of beautiful going on, and the office is huge. It's a freestanding building. You have the latest technology there, so it's really an amazing space for you to work out of, and it's very busy from what I see.
Yeah, and you know what? We feel good coming to work. Everybody's like-minded. We really want to pamper our patients, and we under-promise but over-deliver. I had a couple of patients today that we were able to sneak in, and they said to me, "Oh my God, your girls are great. They were able to get me in earlier. I called up," and it's a process. It's not a destination. It's a journey. So we're constantly fine-tuning the well-oiled machine that it is.
So let's talk a little bit about you don't accept health insurance in your practice, right? You can help people kind of get their money back from their insurance, but you don't get involved working directly with insurance. So let me just ask you why. Why do you prefer the cash model as opposed to that?
That's a conscientious decision that I made because I worked in other practices years ago that accepted insurances as payment, and you literally had to get everything approved by the insurance company. You look at a patient, you say, "This is the best thing for you." You mentioned remineralization. I can write a narrative, and the insurance would say, no, we don't cover that. And, we'll cover a crown. Well, the tooth doesn't need a crown. The patient doesn't need a crown. They just need some remineralization. No, we'll wait for it to become decay big enough, and then we can cover that. So I didn't really think that the insurance company, who has never met the patient, who has not gone to medical school or dental school, could make these decisions for them. And the patient had this philosophy that, oh, wait, if my insurance doesn't cover it, it's not a covered procedure. We don't need it. So it dawned on me that the patient that really cares about, the person that really cares about the patient should be the patient, and should be the physician, right, who's treating that patient. That should be the model. Like, I care about you, you care about you, let's make this happen. This is the best thing for you. And, insurance companies, they're not in the business model of helping people or making them healthy. They have big buildings in the city. They're in the business of making money, right? So that's why I kind of got deterred by being part of the insurance model. I think the patient needs what they need, not more, not less, right? Let's get the patient what they need in the best way possible. And sometimes it's cheaper than insurance. Sometimes it's a little bit more expensive. But I don't want them to pay more than they have to. I just want them to pay for what is best for them.
Well, I think that is, as a business person, the people that I work with, I always look to deliver more than I promise. That's kind of been my way of doing things. And, once you acquire a client, if they trust you, and you inevitably become friendly or you become friends, and it behooves you to do something that goes against the ridiculous amount of time and effort it took to develop that relationship. So unless you're some kind of a psychopath or, some, self-serving evil something or other, you are going to do your best to make sure your clients get your best, your very, very best. And that level of integrity and that level of commitment, it just isn't conducive in the context of the health insurance model. Because, as we spoke about this so many times, there's so many perverse incentives in that system where they'll pay for you to extract the tooth, but they won't pay for you to remineralize the tooth. And so most dentists, people that are working in that model, they don't have the same relationship with their patients that you do, because to them, they're just a number. The insurance company is just going to send them a bunch more people through their funnel. So they see you today, they don't see you tomorrow, they couldn't care less. So what they do to you or don't do to you, it'll probably be motivated by what the insurance company pays for and pays for the most. So, and when you talk about the mouth, right, I don't think we give that a lot of thought. That it's a very, there's a lot of things going on here than just, it's not a mechanical kind of a thing, just, right? You have all the nerves that come out and they run through the brain and go into your whole system. So when you have all that mercury, you and I have seen when they rub they pulled out a tooth and they rub it with a eraser, and all the smoke, the mercury starts vaporizing like a lot. And this vapor goes into it's right there, right? So Alzheimer's and all these Parkinson's and all these neurological diseases, they've become much more prevalent over the last 100 years. And I don't even know how long has mercury been used in dental work?
Over 100 years.
Yeah, it's been, but it wasn't like 500 years. It's been like about 100.
About 100.
Right. So, there's a lot of this intervention. There's a lot of mercury toxicity. Most people are toxic with mercury. Newborn babies are born with 273 chemicals in their umbilical cords. So, we're swimming in the sea of toxicity. And, if we are intelligent enough to change the oil in our car, make sure the tires aren't bald, then we're intelligent enough to make sure that our system of detoxification are working properly. And we don't proactively add toxicity to the body and suppress the body's ability to fight, actual things in the environment that should be fighting, rather than stuff we're putting in there. So we need to become, as individuals, a lot more proactive and a lot more intelligent about what we do and what we don't do for ourselves and for our health and well-being. Because I think like the last 15, 20 years of our life, we're leaving it on the table. We are leaving it on the table. It's being, the medical system pulls out of the last 10 years, hundreds of thousands of dollars from your insurance company for all the different intervention that they do. Become like a medical experiment, So yeah, it's a travesty.
It really is. It really is. But you mentioned that we really should be taking care of ourselves better, and I found that as I preach and talk and coach patients to eat better, take the right supplements. There's no cookie cutter approach. Everybody's different, right? But we know that probiotics, prebiotics, supplements, vitamins, minerals, they can all help us, right? So when I coach people and I guide them in the right direction, you mentioned earlier, people say to me, Jimmy, doesn't that make you less profitable? It's like there are a couple of different departments in the practice. And I find myself, as I'm doing this and I'm preaching and I'm coaching and I'm helping people non-clinically, right, without doing things with my hands, I get busy, right? Because inevitably people do need some more sophisticated clinical things. So I found myself being more busy doing technologically advanced treatments because I've been just honest with people and ethical, and you mentioned integrity, and just, real and transparent with them. Do you find that surprising?
I think you get back from the world what you ultimately put into the world. I found to be like one of those indisputable laws of nature. You put a seed in the ground, the tree grows from the seed. You put out service and care and commitment and passion in spite of whatever the world says. It comes back to you, because I think people are intelligent enough, both mentally and emotionally, to resonate with that energy, And I just know, I just think it's a much more fun way to live life. Life is, as you know, not that long, and we can't take any of this stuff with us. So it's not about the stuff that we accumulate. It's not the guy with the most toys that wins. I think it's the guy that makes the biggest impact, lives his full capacity and whatever talents he was given, that they're all developed and are they're running on all 12 cylinders. You know, I think that is truly a life worth living, and a legacy worth leaving to the next generation that's going to be carrying your name. You know, so I yes. The short answer is yes.
You nailed it. You nailed it.
So we spoke about amalgam fillings. We spoke about the toxicity that we're exposed to. Let's talk a little bit about the oral biome. So the oral biome, I don't know if people are familiar, the digestive system has a biome, and there's more of these bugs inside our system than there are cells in the human body. There are many, many trillions of them. And they're like kind of our partners in how we interact with the world. But the digestion starts in the mouth, the way we chew, the saliva. So what are some of the things that you're noticing with, you talk about saliva acidity and when it's alkaline, how does that affect the mouth? What are some of the things you're seeing in the mouth cavity like that?
Yes, think of it like different topographical areas, right? If you look at a lake, and then you look at a mountain, and you look at a beach, a snowy peak, hot lava, there's different areas of the world, right? Those are ecosystems, but we have the same type of phenomenon in the mouth. What kind of ecosystem is it? Is it like a barren desert-like environment where it's really dry? And what kind of animals, right? Bacteria, fungi, viruses, what kind of living things would thrive in that desert environment? Is it something that's like really, really wet and moist and humid, kind of like a tropical forest, right? So I'm using that analogy because depending on what that biome is, and what is biome, right? It's a combination of living things, right? Flora, fauna, right? Kind of like vegetables, so to speak, and living things like bacteria. And what is the balance of it? Okay, so I used to think of good bacteria, bad bacteria. Well, it doesn't really work that way, right? It's a balance, right? You need all these things to kind of live together. But sometimes it goes towards one end of the spectrum or towards the other. So to oversimplify things, there's aerobic, an environment that loves oxygen, and there's anaerobic, which is the opposite. Aerobic, you won't have gum problems, you won't have bad breath, but you'll have a lot of cavities, right? Because those bacteria that love air, they love oxygen, they thrive in an oxygen-rich environment, and they will cause acid that will break down enamel. And then that has a cascade of effects in the rest of the body. What about anaerobic? Well, anaerobic is more inflammation, it's bad breath, it's gum disease, it's bone loss, loss of connective tissue. And that will trigger other cascades of things. For example, diabetes. It'll exacerbate inflammation of your gut. So if you have more of one thing, you'll have a certain types of diseases in the mouth and the rest of the body. And the other part is true as well. So, that's what we have to look into. So when I look at oral biome, I want to figure out, like you said, is it your saliva? What is your saliva like? Is it acidic? Okay, now I have to focus on these lists of diseases. Is it alkaline? Okay, I can look at this other thing. So I can kind of customize ways to improve the biome. So there are certain probiotics that are good for this. There's certain probiotics that are good for that, right? More water intake. So I can kind of fine tune the optimization, so to speak, of the mouth, which in turn will give you health benefits all over your body.
Right. So one of the things, people like to do is, and I've been fighting with my kids about this, my adults, about this. They like to use mouthwash with alcohol in this mouthwash. And from what I learned, there was this dentist who worked with one of the supplement companies here on Long Island. He would actually put your saliva under a huge microscope. It would be like on a screen about this big, and you get to see all the bugs spinning around in there. It's a pretty frightening sight. But he would point out what bacteria should be there and should not be there, and it's enlightening. So one of the things he recommended was a certain toothpaste, a certain mouthwash, and a certain flossing thing that you would do. But one of the things he spoke about, which made so much sense to me, because it did, because when you put alcohol and you're killing off all the bacteria in the mouth, you still have about 10% of the bacteria that don't die because they're resistant to this. And these become like super bacteria. They get stronger and they multiply. So the thing you're trying to correct gets worse. Your bad breath gets worse. The bad bacteria proliferates in the mouth cavity. And so what he spoke about is making the environment, not like a hostile environment in the mouth, but make it uncomfortable enough for the bacteria you don't want in there to find their way out.
That's brilliant. And that's exactly true. I'm not a huge fan of mouthwash because, like you said, with something like alcohol or some kind of chemical that will kill bacteria, right? Just like you said, if you're killing certain bacteria, there's certain bacteria that you're not, okay? And they're smart enough to kind of change and mutate and, kind of like be sneaky enough to avoid the way that you're trying to kill them, right? And what are you doing? Just like you said, you're kind of setting up a terrorist camp, right? Where these like Al-Qaeda bacteria, they're so difficult to kill, they're outsmarting you, and now you're going to create more disease, more advanced disease. So, we have to be smarter than that. It's not like a bazooka that's going to kill the mosquitoes, right? You have to be kind of like smart and kind of lure the mosquitoes in there, try to kind of move them out of the way. So this way, when you're having your outside party, they won't bother you. So you have to kind of, and I like the idea of probiotics or xylitol gum, for example, because gum, sugar-free, will stimulate salivary flow. So I'm actually allowing the human body to take care of itself, right? Produce more of the saliva that has protective properties. But I'm also using a naturally found sugar like xylitol, which can't be metabolized by the bacteria that cause acid and break down your teeth. So I'm kind of like outsmarting them. I'm not really feeding them. I'm kind of like starving them a little bit, not killing them with chemicals. And same thing with probiotics. Now I'm introducing some more harmless bacteria in the population, in the ecosystem, in the biome. So now there's more competition. So I'm controlling, not killing them off. I'm just like controlling the harmful bacteria. You have to kind of outsmart the system, right?
Right. So, I mean, that all takes a level of education. Ultimately, like if we were part of an ecosystem, and that's one of the things I love that what we're doing, you and I together, is that, we're kind of bringing the whole universe of proactive healthcare together because it's so synergetic. You have the mouth, you have the digestion, you have the food that we eat, you have Dr. Rosenthal who does, more proactive type cutting edge laser and stem cell, all that kind of stuff. And so when we can work by providing the body everything that it needs, all the nutrition, all the vitamins, all the minerals, and then remove and keep out all the toxicity and the heavy metals, and then heal the system of digestion beginning from the mouth. So when you put a piece of food into your mouth, you know that the biome in the mouth is doing its job to the best of its ability. That you're not, you also have to chew your food. And one of the things we spoke about, you mentioned, is that the correlation, lifespan, like how long and how well we actually live, is how well we actually digest the food in the mouth. So if you're missing teeth, or if you are not chewing properly, and how many dentists talk to you about chewing? Like, I mean, or what you're actually eating? Does anybody say anything? They give you a lollipop. Really. They give you a lollipop to have you coming back with it. Make more cavities. I'm not sure. I'm sure it's not that sinister, but still.
Yeah, but like you said, I mean, if you don't have enough teeth, and I'm telling you to eat, raw carrots or asparagus or artichokes, you can't eat those nutrient-dense foods, right? So what do you resort to? Mushy stuff, right? Carbs, processed food. You can't eat the raw, apples with the skin on. You just don't have enough chewing surfaces, right? You don't have enough teeth. So, and also there's a psychological component, right? If you don't have a nice smile, you shy away from smiling, you're more depressed. So, longevity, right, is a combination of multiple different things. Being able to eat the right foods being one of them, having confidence being another, just being overall healthy. So that's where teeth kind of contribute to that.
And also, I think many years ago, from what I understand, when they dug up skeletons of like Neanderthals, and these people didn't have access to much dentistry. I'm sure they didn't floss anything, but still their teeth were intact for the most part. And they didn't need braces. It's just like they had beautiful set of teeth, no body, but the teeth were still there together with the skull. So the Weston Price Foundation, as I'm sure you know, this was a dentist who went out around the world trying to figure out why do some cultures around the world have these perfect teeth. And so what he found was that their nutrition played a tremendous role in whether their teeth were healthy enough. I mean, that makes sense because, if the body has all the nutrition to constantly, because everything's fluid, literally and physically, everything's fluid within us. So it keeps evolving. We keep making new cells. We keep growing. And that whole process requires nutrition for one cell to grow into another healthy, buoyant, vibrant, healthy cell. It needs all of this nutrition. And unfortunately, the way people eat in our world, in the United States today, even if they try to eat well, it's difficult to access the kind of food that provides that kind of optimal nutritional abundance that our great-grandparents had no problem accessing. So, in the perfect world, we have this great ecosystem where we can help people access the best quality food. We can help them access the best quality dentistry, the best quality technological advances. That some of these advances are like 50 years ahead, but the medical world won't embrace them because they're still trying to figure out how to build the insurance company for the codes they have today. And so that's what it is. If we can figure out a way to actually create a system where all of these things are taken care of, it doesn't have to be that expensive. I think what makes it so expensive is when the government and the bureaucracy is involved in the system. And then you have the doctors, like you saw this line of doctors expanded a little bit, but the bureaucrats went like this. So why is the system so expensive? Because we have bureaucrats figured out how to profit by getting like a lizard squeezing themselves in between the doctor and the client where they don't belong. But they made us believe that somehow, some way, the government should be responsible for our healthcare. So somebody should be giving it to us for free. It is the stupidest. It's like selling you the Brooklyn Bridge of nonsense. The only person that should care about your health is you, and hopefully you find a doctor that's more like that. But ultimately, it's you. And if you think the government is going to pay for your health care or some insurance company cares about you, it's an absurd worldview. I think very, very self-defeating is what it is. When I first was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis 20 years ago, I started entering I never went to the doctor, but I started entering the system, and I went with my health insurance card to a bunch of doctors, but it was the same doctor 20 times over, the same philosophy, the same mindset, the same education, the same business model. So they would all recommend pretty much the same things. And to me, it didn't make any sense at that point. And I said, this just doesn't make sense. Nobody's talking to me. Nobody wants to find out my nutritional level, my nutritional habits, my toxicity levels, my vitamin levels, nothing. They just see me for 3 minutes and they give me a sample cream that the drug rep just dropped off for the doctor to pass on to me. And it suppresses the symptoms, but then the symptoms get worse. It's so like you got a fire in your belly and they're swatting at the smoke. Nobody's addressing the underlying cause. And that to me just didn't make any sense. So I really love what we're doing here. And I hope that this evolves into something that the world embraces. I mean, you know, on the one hand, I don't want to be overly optimistic. On the other hand, it's my nature. I can't help it. So,
I gotta share a quick story with you, really quick. One of my most brilliant team members up in the front, she had to call her physician to find out about her blood tests. So the lady said, "Oh yeah, everything's fine." Okay, well, can you talk to me? Can somebody talk to me about my? No, I'm not supposed to talk to you about your results. Well, isn't there like a nurse practitioner? Yeah, she's right next to me, but she's busy filling out paperwork. She can't talk to you right now. Okay, well, what are we gonna do? I can send you your blood results and you can Google it and find out what's normal and what's not normal. And she's like, and then the last thing she says is like, look, you know what? I can give you a prescription for this injection. You can do a self-injection and you'll lose a lot of weight and you'll feel great. We all tried it. Everything's great. You should do that. So you can't talk to me about my blood results, but you're going to give me a prescription, right? So I can lose weight with medication.
Insane. It's insane. But you know why that is? Because the insurance company will pay for the blood test, which is the most profitable thing. But it's not going to pay a doctor to sit with you and explain the results. So they're incentivized to do all of this testing and not incentivized to do any of the healing. So yeah, I mean, the system is crazy, and I think it's just ripe for some healthy disruption. But you know, it's also $4.3 trillion. So it's going to be fighting any disruption. And you see the kind of stuff that they do to people that try to mess with their systems.
Right.
But, you know, I just think that, look, our society can't get any sicker, can't afford to. And it literally can't afford to spend any more money on all of this sickness. So, you know, there are very brave people in the history of the world that made a big difference for future generations. And somebody's got to stand up and say, you know, this is, we got to come up with something smarter, something better, something more thought out. I don't know. I feel like our healthcare system today has been built by these bureaucratic accidents. You know, like it started in 1942. With the Stabilization Act of 1942, where the government didn't want companies competing for labor and talent because everybody was fighting the war. So they didn't want one company pulling talent from another company. So it just said, okay, everybody, you can't raise salaries. You got to keep the salaries where they are. So business people, entrepreneurs are creative, intelligent people. And they're like, okay, we can't raise salaries, fine. We'll give them health insurance for free. Oh, health insurance for free? Fine, you can do that. Health insurance, well, it costs nothing. So health insurance for free. And that's how our health insurance got glued to the employer. It's not like that in a lot of other countries. And from there, it just kind of, you know, it turned into this bureaucracy where then you had HMOs in 1970 trying to control the expenses. But, you know, it's just at some point, they just threw up their hands. They said, okay, just print more money. You know, we went from like 27 billion in the 60s to $1 trillion 1995, 2 trillion 2005. Well, you know the story. So now we're 4.3 trillion, which is, I mean, we're going to go to 8.6 trillion. Seriously?
Well, like you said, the government doesn't really care about your health. The insurance company doesn't care about your health. How about your employer? Does your employer really care about your health?
Yeah, like why should your employer be involved in your health and health decisions? And that's the other thing. And also, you know, the system is the way it is, but there's also nobody out there teaching people a more proactive philosophy and approach and working directly with these physicians that can help them circumvent these chronic illnesses. And so, you know, it's all one-sided. You have billions of dollars that are spent by the fast food industry, billions of dollars spent by the pharmaceutical industry. And all of these people are focused on creating the disease and then managing that disease. But nobody's out there, though, at least up until this point, had the resources to go out there and say, listen, people, let's cut out sugar. Okay, let's just cut out sugar.
Right.
Because it damages the teeth, it damages the body, creates inflammation. Like the majority of the problems that are being caused in our health in the United States, I think, is from all this abundance of sugar in our nutrition. And I had this friend of mine, I guess. He every time we would get together, I know for 20 years, he would put like 4 to 5 or 6 teaspoons of sugar into his coffee. And we would be like, you know, at that time I was already kind of beginning my studies in human optimization. And I was like, dude, this is ridiculous. This is way too much sugar. Oh no, I love it. It was thin, he would look good. It was there. 20 years later, the guy has like a huge belly, he's got diabetes. So, you know, we've been taught to save for retirement. I think all of us can understand that concept. You have to be frugal, you have to be intelligent financially, you have to try to put some money away, because when you retire and you're not going to be working, you need money so you can enjoy your life, blah, 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 golden years. But nobody talks to us like that about our health. Right? Let's invest into your health today, because when you have all this money and then you have all this time to enjoy your retirement, you actually want to have some life energy to get out of bed.
Exactly.
Without one of those kick, you know,
You know, how about the kids menu? You go to a restaurant and it's like, oh, the kids menu. There's nothing healthy in the kids menu.
Yeah,
you know,
cheese sandwich, French fries.
Right. That's not, what are we doing to
Well,
our kids?
but as parents, like, you know, I remember young parents, we had no idea what to feed our children. You go to Costco and you buy some roll-up loops that they liked or cereals that they liked.
Right.
You know, and I mean, it took me a minute to figure out. I was telling my wife, I said, listen, we can't give them this. This is not food.
No.
We've got to give them something different. So eventually we figured it out. But ultimately, unless you're proactively searching for this information, at the time there was no internet, there was no all these brilliant people out there kind of sharing this information. So you had to kind of stumble your way and try to figure it out. But you just have to be proactive doing this kind of stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
So as we kind of come to the end of this excellent program, I just want to kind of you know, finalize with some of the things that you feel are important for people to know, just in general about their health, well-being, longevity, the things at the top of your mind that you really think would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, look, we need the right foods, right? It all starts with that. And you mentioned 10,000 years ago, people had perfectly straight teeth, no cavities, beautiful teeth. Why? Because they didn't have any processed foods. And I know that's a tall order, but you know, we just have to be smart about things. So I encourage people to do their research, pick the right foods. Nothing's perfect, but try to do your best. Look for the right supplements, vitamins, and minerals. I can definitely give some pointers to people when the time comes, but there are some really powerful superfoods that we can use that are easy to incorporate, and that's the word. You have to find out a way to incorporate the right supplements, nutrients, but also incorporate the right habits. How many times do we eat a day? What's the right oral hygiene regimen, right? I'm not going to introduce 17 different things because you're not going to do them. But if you pick 3 things that are easy to incorporate, like flossing at night, for example, that's a good thing to do, right? You brush your teeth, don't eat anything until you go to bed, right? So make sure you time everything right. So it's all about the little things, really. It's not about these big things, little things. And if you can incorporate it into your normal routine, I feel you're going to be healthier, not just in the mouth, but the rest of the body.
Well, for those of you who joined us and stuck around till the end of this program, we appreciate it. And I just want to tell you, I've known Dr. Jamie Kilimidzoglu for a good, I don't know, 6 years, a long time. And I've had the pleasure of working with really some amazing physicians, passionate, brilliant, like you saw over these last 3 years. Everybody had a common view and a common message. But there were some lone voices who were brave enough to stand up to what didn't make any sense. And they were canceled and they were yelled at and they were called all kinds of names. But it turned out that they were ultimately right in many aspects. And I think you're like that. You're kind of like, you're not like a sail that blows in the wind this way and that way. You're just kind of like this big mountain, just stays in your established belief, your commitment to your patient and your art. And you're just one of the most passionate and caring and brilliant people that I have the pleasure of knowing. And anyone who becomes your client, I think it'll be a blessing, because, you know, I've sent you quite a bit of clients over the years. And the only feedback I get is, you know, thank you. This was the best. I drove there for 2 hours, 3 hours. I flew in. It was the best thing I've ever did. So you are a blessing to Long Island and this country, a treasure, a mensch.
That's it. Thank you so much for your kind words.
Jimmy, I appreciate you very much, my friend. And I appreciate you doing this with me. Have a great night. And I'll see you in a little bit.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.